Green Rising, an Alternative Future. The Problématique. We face a number of wicked problems. The count goes from 49 to 100, but they are all rooted in a similar cause. We have a growth-oriented culture, and there are limits to growth. We are all familiar with the standard run from Limits to Growth, which predicted an exponential growth reaching its ultimate limits in 2025 and then beginning a decline. We know of many cultures that maintain a stable population within the limits of their environment. Why is Western society so committed to growth? Limits to Growth was largely ignored. It attempted to give a deterministic picture of where current 1970 trends were leading, but it refused to ask the most important question. How do these decisions to destroy the environment get made? Control systems form nested hierarchies. In order to effect change at the higher level of Gaia, it will require change at all the lower levels: culture, state, corporations, family, and individual. Decision-making. Alternatives. A decision is always a choice between alternatives. Worldview. The possible alternatives is usually limited by our worldview. Values. In the end, every decision is an exercise in values clarification. It is a decision about values. Corporate decision-making. We are aware of the primary driver of growth in Western society. It is the capitalist corporation and its commitment to the exponential growth of capital. For the capitalist corporation, there is no other alternative but growth, because their worldview is the balance sheet and the profit and loss statement. Therefore, the only value is 10% growth in earnings per share. The alternatives to the capitalist corporation. There are numerous alternatives to the capitalist corporation. There are non-profit corporations, there are cooperatives, there are stakeholder-run corporations. We have numerous examples of all of these. All of these would reduce the political pressure for more growth. The decision to have a capitalist society is a political decision. Practical political decision-making. Perception that people want growth. Value, getting elected. Alternative, promise to grow the economy. The popular demand for growth, capitalist growth. In order to grow profits, a corporation must become more efficient. Being more efficient means doing more work with fewer workers. The unemployed workers want jobs. To generate more jobs, the economy has to increase the number of products to be consumed, thus increasing the level of consumption, the GDP. Free market inequality. Money is the measure of free market power. The free market distributes food, the rich feast, the poor starve. The free market distributes housing, the rich live in mansions, the poor are homeless. Growing inequality creates political pressure for more growth. As more social functions are redefined as capitalist corporations, the political demand for growth increases, and the goal of government becomes increasing the GDP. The alternative economy, from wealth to health. The function of an economy is to provide food, housing, and clothing for the community. Thus, the economy focused on wealth is the healthy economy of hunger, homelessness, and rags. Health, on the other hand, needs a healthy economy where people have food, shelter, and clothing. Therefore, in a wealth-based economy, infinite growth consumes the planet, but in a health-focused economy, you can have a steady-state economy. Political worldview, neoliberal ideology. The popular demand for growth reinforces what is an established political ideology, neoliberalism. Their worldview is society is a collection of individuals dedicated to maximizing consumption. Their values are selfishness, greed, and irresponsibility, and the only perceived option is growth. There has been a steady critique of GDP as the primary value for a society. Development has traditionally meant growing a country's GDP. People in development programs have been looking at alternative values for development. The Inequality-Adjusted Human Development Index, the Millennium Development Goals, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. All of these efforts move toward looking at society not as a machine, but as an organism. The alternative worldview. Society is an organic whole. The biological functions of a society. Health can be understood as the effective functioning of the different parts of the society. The anthropologist Edward T. Hall identified 10 basic biological functions of a community: communication, order, economy, reproduction, space, time, play, learning, defense or health, and technology. Cultural decisions making Western materialist culture. The neoliberal political philosophy of a society of individuals dedicated to maximizing consumption cannot be changed at the political level. It is a cultural worldview and must be changed at the cultural level. Western materialist culture. The neoliberal ideology is rooted in materialism. When we talk about materialism, we are usually referring to materialist morality, values, selfishness. We are individuals, and our primary concern is for self-development. Greed. The goal of life is happiness, and happiness is measured by the material things you can buy and consume: houses, cars, vacations, food, clothing. Irresponsibility. We are isolated individuals and not part of anything larger. We are independent. The materialist morality is rooted in the materialist metaphysics. Worldview, materialist metaphysics. Materialism is the belief that only material things are real. Thus things like love, compassion, peace, and God, because they are not material things, you cannot put them in a wheelbarrow, are therefore not real. Mechanistic reductionism. The most effective spreading of the doctrine of materialism has been by the sciences dominated by mechanistic reductionism. Mechanistic reductionism teaches that the universe is simply a giant and complicated machine. Thus, any event can be understood by reducing it to a mechanism. Newtonian mechanics sees a world where everything stays the same until it is forced to change. Thus, to understand any event, you identify the forces that caused it to happen. There are no decisions, there are no plans, there are no values. There is only the deterministic world of cause and effect. The mechanistic dream. Spaceship Earth, replacing the sky with steel plates. Why do people believe that when we've destroyed the planetary ecosystem, we can just get in a spaceship and fly away? Because materialism teaches we are not part of the ecosystem. We are independent individuals. The ecosystem is just a big machine, and we can build a better one. The alternative worldview, holism. The core values of holism are love. We are not alone. We belong to a larger reality of which we are a part. Because we belong, we respect others who are one with us. We love our world. Generosity. We live to serve. Our life has a meaning and function as part of a larger whole to which we contribute our gifts. Responsibility. We clean up our mess. Our well-being is part of the well-being of our world, and we are responsible for caring for our world. The alternative holistic worldview. Boundaries. A holistic system is defined by a boundary that distinguishes the system from its environment. The boundary creates an identity. Holarchy. Holistic systems form nested hierarchies, with each system being part of a larger system and communicating between levels. Communication. Holistic systems communicate. Matter and energy are the media of information and communication and communication control matter and energy. Control. Holistic systems make and communicate decisions. Behavior is controlled by ideas. The holistic alternative allows us to have a social philosophy that can see society as an organism with organic functions and values. Crisis. Western civilization is a growth-focused society, and thus it is unsustainable. Because growth has limits, the society will encounter those limits and experience functional failure. That functional failure is experienced as a crisis. The crisis is an opportunity for change. The first response will be to try to find materialistic solutions. This will fail, and there will be another crisis and another opportunity for change. The locus of cultural change. The culture is based on ideas, a philosophy. Change requires a change in philosophy, and the philosophy of Western society is passed on by the media, including the arts, the university, and the church. The university is the bastion of materialism, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But holism is coming. DNA and genetic research are becoming holistic. The Gaia hypothesis, the symbiotic theory of evolution. Spirituality is holistic. It means seeing ourselves as part of a larger reality. Thus the Green Manifesto. Each system has a status quo and a green alternative. Thus our worldview is materialism, it could be holism. Our political values are wealth, it could be health. Our economic values are GDP growth, they could be to feed, clothe, and house. Corporate purpose is profit, it could be social mission. Our individual values are selfishness and greed, they could be love and respect.